This is the DEI-ALLIANCE Spotlight presented by Rising Coaches, the largest coaching tree in basketball. Remember, for just $8 a month using promo code May2023, you can become a member of Rising Coaches. Get locked in for more relationships, development, and coaching opportunities at risingcoaches.com. My name is Aaron Proctor. I'm currently the Director of Men's Basketball Operations for Lamar University. On today's BeReady Family Spotlight, we have the GO's finest, assistant coach of Mississippi State women's basketball, Corry Irvine. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's an honor to have you on here. We just kind of in our time since BeReady, you've obviously been a great resource for a lot of people, a lot of coaches, and just kind of obviously you have a great background and a great story. So we're excited to have you on, and we appreciate you making the time.
Well, I appreciate you having me. I mean, BeReady and even Rising Coaches have meant a lot to me and opened a lot of doors and allowed me to meet a lot of new people. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Well, I guess let's dive right in. If you wouldn't mind kind of giving us your background, your story, and how you've gotten to this point in your career.
I'm originally from outside of Chicago. Started coaching at DePaul University. Then I went to Whitney Young High School for about 18 seasons. And then I left and became a head coach at the NAIA school in Chicago, St. Xavier. Then I went and became an assistant at Illinois. And last season was my first season as assistant here at Mississippi State. So I've been coaching about 25 years. I played at Fresno State, so been playing since I was about 4. So I've been around basketball pretty much my entire life. So,
and you put up numbers. Like, don't hit us with the humility, right? Like, you put up numbers at Fresno State, right?
Yes, I did, but that was way before. I was thinking the other day, like that was before the WNBA, and I don't, had I been like 1 or 2 years younger, I probably would have continued playing. But when I grew up, there was no WNBA, and you only could go overseas. Mm-hmm. And it was before cell phones and computers, so I was not going overseas and leaving my family and not knowing what I was doing over there. So
right.
I always had in my head when I was done my senior year, I was just going to be done. And then I got into coaching, which gives me opportunity to still be around the game.
And you started out at the high major level, mm-hmm. and then you ended up going back to high school.
Yep.
What was that transition like for you? Was that something? Was being coaching in high school something that you had a desire for?
I really liked college. It was a different time, back then, and the head job at Whitney Young opened up, and Whitney Young is kind of like, I would say, like a small junior college. It's mm-hmm. really like the level that it's at. And I really wanted to be a head coach just to see if I wanted to be a head coach. We always think like we want to be a head coach, but do we really want to? And I felt like the high school level was a good spot for me to start and make sure that I wanted to do it. And then I stayed there a long time for a lot of different reasons. I mean, I had opportunities to go back to college, but I really liked the high school, my principal. I love Chicago, so just having the opportunity to stay at home was another reason why I stayed. And we were traveling and doing a lot of the same things that colleges do. So I was there really until an opportunity arose for me to be a head coach and go back to college. So that's really why I ended up leaving.
That Chicago culture, that Chicago basketball scene, mm-hmm. I think, obviously, growing up in Houston and seeing New York and DC and LA, like there's every, major city has a basketball scene. But I in my experience with Chicago, everybody is really kind of tapped in with each other. Mm-hmm. And there's really a familial aspect to the Chicago scene. Kind of talk about that and how that's been instrumental in your development and just kind of your story.
Well, one thing about, Chicago, and I agree with you, I think every major city has kind of its own style. Mm-hmm. Or, like sometimes I'll go to the gym and I'm like, I know that kid's from New York. Well, I know this kid's from Miami, or I know this kid is from the West Coast. Like you can kind of tell. But one thing that's different, I feel like in Chicago, is that it's just basketball. So it's not girls basketball, boys basketball, men's basketball, women's basketball. It's just basketball. And there's a level of respect between the two genders that nobody cares. Girls go and they're playing with the guys. Like you might go to an open gym and it's like girls and guys playing together. And there's no level like she can't play or he, like, there's no, like, that isn't it. It's just basketball. And that's what I like, you know, and I've always like appreciated about Chicago is that it's a basketball city and there's a level of respect for everybody. If you can play and you're tough, it don't matter. And I've always kind of liked that. And from a coaching standpoint, it's that level of respect too, because everybody knows, like, if you're coaching, you know, like, it doesn't matter if you're female, you're a male, like everybody has that same level of respect. So I would say like that to me is like one big thing about, you know, Chicago, and naturally the players, I always say they're probably the toughest players in the country if you're coming out.
Chicago is different,
Yeah.
you know, and obviously, you know, I kind of grew up in a bunch of different places, so I was able to see a bunch of different types of basketball. I've recruited some guys from Chicago, and they are definitely they're unlike any other group of players I think that I've recruited, in that, like you mentioned, there's such a respect amongst, if you're tough and you can play, those guys all know each other. Those players all know each other.
Yep.
So I think that's, you know, being from Chicago, and I think that's a great part of your story, just kind of in terms of, you know, the amount of time that you spent there, and you're, you know, obviously you have a great background, a great family name. When you talk about, I guess, so when BeReady first kind of started, I had met you before, but the Irvin, that Irvin name and in Chicago just instantly popped out at me. But you're clearly so much more than just that part of your career, and that. Can you kind of talk about as people have gotten to know you in BeReady, you know, you've taken on a mentorship role to a lot of coaches. Is that something that you kind of going into it, where is that something that you were expecting, like that you wanted to do, or is that something that just kind of fell in your lap?
I think it just fell in my lap. Like when I first started, and I tell this story, it's so hilarious. Lance, my brother-in-law, was like, get on the Zoom call. And I was like, okay. So I get on the Zoom call, and it's like, you know how you can't scroll all the way over. And I'm like, it's all male coaches. And so I was like, Lance, I don't think I'm supposed to be on here. I think it's just all male coaches. He's like, no, it's some females on there. You know, just stay on the call. We're texting while the call is going on. So the first call, I didn't say a word. I just listened. And I was like, there's so many great coaches on there talking about so many different things. But after the first call, I sent an email to Alvin Brooks, and I said, I just have a question. Is it okay for me to get on the call? Because I didn't see that there were a lot of women coaches. He's like, we got all kinds of coaches out here. So be on next week. And when I first was on there, I was just trying to learn from everybody that was on there. But I think what was a great thing about BeReady, there's so many different coaches with so many different backgrounds and so much different knowledge that we all just kind of pour into each other. So naturally, there's some people I feel like I've been able to help throughout the process, but there's been a lot more people who've helped me and have become mentors to me as we've gone for the last couple of years.
What was your experience like in terms of, you know, BeReady, especially during the pandemic? And I've talked with a lot of coaches just about how that experience. There's so many different things that people were kind of going through emotionally, spiritually, even just, you know, just kind of being at the house and not really being able to kind of interact with people. Was that something that was integral to kind of like, you know, hey, this is something that I can look forward to, and, you know, I can definitely start interacting with this more and more?
It was Wednesday nights. My kids, my husband, they were like, oh, there you go. Just go and get the computer. I would go upstairs and lock the door and be like, don't interrupt. And then it'll be like 3-4 hours later. So I would definitely was looking forward to it, because we were in Chicago, we were on complete shutdown longer than anybody else. So, you know, I was in the house at like all day long. So I was definitely looking forward to it. And it helped me a lot through just getting through that phase of, you know, being almost essentially locked up, I guess, essentially for so long. So
I remember when the Last Dance documentary was on, and we had like a watch party, and I'm putting on my Jordans, and I ain't going nowhere. My wife was like, "What are you doing? Like this is what we are doing, you know."
Right, right, right.
And I, that whole experience for me was, it was kind of liberating, and
Mhm.
just being able, someone like yourself who is a head coach, or at the time was a head coach, and even being at the Power Five level. I think for guys, me included at the time, I didn't know that interacting, you try not to overstep, or you try to kind of like be in your role, right? Kind of like be in your place. But
Yeah,
I think that the biggest thing that I got from is like everybody just loves basketball, and everybody wants to get better.
yep.
And that allows us to kind of have those conversations. You being a head coach and kind of moving towards, I guess one of the things that BeReady really kind of helped me understand was just like how things work in terms of the job market,
Mhm.
and having relationships with people. Your experience going from head coach back to assistant, what was that transition like for you? And has that been something that, obviously I know you want to be a head coach again, but what was that transition like for you, and what were some of the things that you took from being a head coach into being an assistant?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard because naturally I like being a head coach because I like the pressure of the decision making.
Hmm.
And that's something I like. I feel like I thrive on. And for me, probably part of that transition has just been, realizing like my main job is to make sure our head coach looks good. And what does that look like? Because it's always going to change, what that looks like, or what my roles are, or my responsibilities are, and just trying to, figure that out, I guess. Like, is it okay to do this, or can I be doing this? Making that adjustment. I mean, I've learned a lot the past 2 years on kind of the importance of giving your staff expectations, and the importance of making everybody feel important. I've kind of just seen that from just a different view, a different lens. But I think it's good. I mean, do plan on going back to being a head coach, so just having this opportunity, obviously at the highest level, and especially in the SEC, is just giving me another view. And I just feel like all our experiences all together will and make me a better head coach when I get back to being one.
What that kind of just made me think of something in terms of like, your younger self.
Mhm.
What are some things that, knowing what you know now about the profession and about your role, what are some things that you would probably tell your younger self, as you were coming up?
Ooh, I think I would probably tell my younger self the biggest thing about coaching is having I don't want to say thick skin because I don't like that term, but
Mhm.
having enough confidence in yourself, to one, bet on yourself, because I think I took too long to kind of bet on myself and to kind of be okay with putting myself out there with different things. But to know that you're not going to please everybody. And just
Right.
having that acceptance, that self acceptance, and understanding that, because it's hard to accept that you're not going to please everybody. And when I first started coaching, I didn't understand that. I constantly was like, I want to please everybody. If one person isn't happy, like it changed. I wasn't happy. But just understanding that when you're dealing with so many people, everybody might not always be happy with your decisions, but I got to be happy with the decisions that I'm making. So that I definitely would, if I could go back, I would have knew that a lot earlier than I did, because I feel like I was really stressed when I was younger because I didn't understand that.
That's such a great point. And then even kind of like almost finding your voice, right? Like finding, like knowing who you are and being comfortable with who you are.
Yep.
Um, and I mean, obviously, it's, you know, the more experience you gain, the more you kind of,
Right.
you start really kind of, not necessarily not worrying about what the next person thinks, but you're just really confident in your decision making,
Yep.
and what you like to do. Um, Coach, I really appreciate the time. I really appreciate you. I see you at the vacation house. Uh,
uh, the internet,
uh,
the internet is undefeated. Ain't that what they be saying?
Yo, look, it never lost. Like LeVar Ball would say, never lost.
Exactly.
But no, Coach. Obviously, you're so well respected, and I made it a deliberate point not to even do the whole women's coach. Like, you are well respected in the coaching profession, period, regardless of gender. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me and talk with us. And those SEC championships, I know they're hard to come by. We're rooting for you all day, every day.
Thank you. They're very hard to come by. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. And, like I said, BeReady and even Rising Coaches have meant a lot to me. So anytime I have an opportunity to talk about them, I will.
Yes, man. Well, thank you. We really appreciate you. And again, just want to remind everyone, for $8 a month using promo code May 2023, you can become a member of Rising Coaches. Lock in for more relationships, development, and opportunities at risingcoaches.com. I'm Aaron Proctor, and until next time.